They said it couldn't be done, but President Trump did it. The first Middle East peace agreement in decades. President Trump brought once bitter enemies, Israel, Bahrain, and the UAE, together to make peace.
I am grateful to you, President Trump, for your decisive leadership.
President Trump, nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Leadership that makes the world safer.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
After decades of division and conflict, September 15, 2020 was a historic day for peace. President Donald J. Trump brokered the signing of 2 peace agreements between Israel and Arab states, the first in more than a quarter century. They were between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and between Israel and Bahrain. Hello, I'm Christian James, a spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State in London, and this is U.S. policy on the Abraham Accords, explained. These 2 agreements normalized relations between these nations, establishing regional peace built upon shared interests, mutual respect, and friendship. 5 weeks later, the United States brokered yet a 3rd peace agreement, this time between Israel and Sudan. Collectively known as the Abraham Accords, through these agreements, each country recognizes the importance of strengthening peace in the Middle East and around the world through mutual understanding and respect for human dignity and freedom. They also promote interfaith and intercultural dialogue in order to advance a culture of peace through cooperation. They acknowledge that the best way to address challenges is through cooperation and dialogue, and the importance of tolerance and respect for every person. And finally, they call for an end to radicalization and conflict by supporting science, art, medicine, and commerce to inspire humankind, maximize human potential, and bring nations closer together. Through the Abraham Accords, Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Sudan are setting aside their differences and pursuing long-lasting peace in the region. They are now establishing embassies, exchanging ambassadors, and cooperating as partners on a variety of issues, including tourism, trade, healthcare, and security. The Abraham Accords are a monumental step in creating more opportunities for establishing peace, prosperity, and stability in the Middle East. I'm Christian James, and this is the U.S. policy on the Abraham Accords.
A peace deal has finally been struck. But peace takes more than signatures and handshakes. The world is talking about the Israel-UAE deal. Tonight we'll break it down for you. We'll discuss what it means for those involved, for the region, and for India. The deal between Israel and the UAE is called the Abraham Accord. It's been brokered by the United States. Israel and the UAE have no diplomatic relationship. They do not recognize each other. Their leaders do not talk to each other. All of that will change now. Let me tell you what happens next. Israel and the UAE will now establish full diplomatic relations. Both sides will set up their embassies, their diplomats can meet, leaders will hold bilateral talks. Now to the question of why this is so significant. What is the big deal? It's big because in West Asia, no Gulf country has a diplomatic relationship with Israel, which means Israel is not recognized by most of West Asia, except for 3 countries, Jordan, Egypt, and now the UAE. And like all stories, this too has a backstory. It's not like these countries have never engaged. All activities that used to happen behind the scenes will now happen in public view. That is the difference, and it's a big difference. Security cooperation can be made public. Israeli companies can now open offices in the UAE. Israeli passports will now be recognized on the borders of the UAE. In the coming weeks, delegations from both sides will meet. They will sign several bilateral deals covering pretty much everything under the sun. Investment, tourism, direct flights, technology, communication, you name it. So what is the United States doing here? Well, a few years back, US President Donald Trump had unveiled his peace plan for West Asia, an attempt to settle the long-standing territorial dispute between Israel and Palestine. Trump's plans heavily favor Israel. One of the major sticking points is the ownership of West Bank. It's a chunk of land that lies towards the west of River Jordan, hence the name West Bank. Now, Israel and Palestine both stake claim over this piece of land. But West Bank has been occupied by Israel since 1967. Donald Trump's plan allots different territories of the West Bank to Israel. But that agreement has not gone anywhere. So some time back, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu decided to annex these territories, take them. After yesterday's announcement, Netanyahu has put these plans on hold, at least for now. And that is the single biggest takeaway from this deal. Israel and the UAE have established diplomatic ties and a potential flare-up has been avoided. With less than 90 days left for the US election, Donald Trump is taking a victory lap.
It will allow much greater access to Muslims from throughout the world to visit the many historic sites in Israel, which the Muslims want to see very badly and have wanted to see for many, many decades, and to peacefully pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is a very special place for them. I want to thank the leaders of Israel and the UAE for their courage and for their leadership to forge this tremendous agreement. It will be known as the Abraham Accord.
In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is taking a victory lap too. Two reasons for this. First, he has a way out of the annexation plan that was frankly going nowhere. And second, Netanyahu will contest the next election in Israel from a position of strength.
The establishment of a full and formal peace between Israel and the UAE. It includes the mutual opening of embassies, direct flights, and many, many other bilateral agreements. This is the greatest advancements toward peace between Israel and the Arab world in the last 26 years, and it marks the third formal peace between Israel and an Arab nation.
What about Palestinian leaders? Well, they're not happy about this. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has denounced the accord. Another Palestinian leader said that the UAE has stabbed them with a poisonous dagger.
In exchange for this, we will sell out Palestine and Palestinian rights. And the irony is, after doing all of this, they come and say, we did that for the Palestinians. No, you did not do that for me. I never expected this dagger, poison dagger, to come from an Arab country.
Iran sees the Abraham Accord as a threat. Its sworn enemies, the UAE and Israel, have joined hands. What could be worse? Iran says this is a dangerous deal.
Let's talk about Israel's new friends. For years, many Arab countries banded together against Israel. But some countries are rethinking that.
Saudi Arabia was actually the first Arab state to put normalization with Israel on the table.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made a secret visit to Saudi Arabia.
Some are even making it official.
The agreement signed between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain formalizes relationships already in place.
What they're calling normalization appears to have been happening quietly for years. Now it's out in the open, and the US is pretty much leading the whole thing. So what does normalization even mean? What's in it for these countries? And how does it affect the Palestinians? Normalization is basically diplomatic speak for two countries having some kind of formal relationship where before there was none, through things like trade deals, setting up embassies, and direct flights. But not that long ago, the idea of Gulf countries having cordial relations with Israel was unthinkable. There's been a lot of bad blood. In 1948, Israel expelled around 750,000 Palestinians and declared itself a state.
The conflict catches the inevitable innocent in its toil.
That basically sparked decades of on-again, off-again Arab-Israeli wars. At one point, Saudi Arabia even sent in troops. Since then, the problem has been how Israel is slowly taking over Palestinian land by illegally building settlements, blockading the Gaza Strip, and militarily occupying everything else. So for as long as many can remember, Saudi Arabia has stood by the Palestinians, particularly King Salman.
إن القضية الفلسطينية هي القضية الأولى للدول العربية.
Together with other Arab states, the Saudis drew a line in the sand in 2002.
No normalization without an end to Israeli occupation, an agreement on the establishment of a Palestinian state on the 1967 lines.
But King Salman is not really in charge anymore, and his son seems to have other ideas.
The old guard is anti-Israel, is pro-Palestinian, but now you have a newer generation, the new guard. He is not very attached to the Palestinian identity.
It's why those recent reports of a secret Saudi-Israeli meeting got so much attention.
In a first-of-its-kind visit,
U.S. and Israeli media say the American Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was on an official visit to Saudi Arabia when Benjamin Netanyahu flew over too.
And touched down in home.
The Saudis, though, say it never happened.
There's something going on. Israelis are excited to go public in this. The Americans are excited before Trump leaves. And the Saudis seems more, let's take it step by step.
We have a vision where Israel becomes a normal part of the region, where it has fully normal relations with its neighbors. What we need to have that happen is for a peace deal between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Other countries are already embracing a new friendship. Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates both signed deals with Israel in 2020.
A golden opportunity for peace, security, and prosperity for our region.
Those who are with us today and those who will join us tomorrow, I say, Assalamu alaikum.
Sudan has a normalization agreement too. So where does all of this leave the Palestinians? Well, it weakens their leaders' position to negotiate a peace deal with Israel. And for many Palestinian people, it'll just be harder to get justice or undo decades of Israeli occupation.
The Palestinians are saying Israel has been rewarded for conceding nothing.
نعتبره طعنة في ظهر شعبنا.
So why the change?
I think for the Emirati it's very clear. It's a business transaction.
There was a UAE-Israeli trade conference, and Twitter pages are now promoting Israeli products in the Gulf and Emirati products in Israel.
You hear me, friend, far away, far away. I hear you play.
Any other year, this joint music video by Israeli and Emirati artists would have just seemed weird. But this is 2020.
It puts Israel in a different light. It revives the ability to really openly work and openly trade with these countries.
Trading with Israel would make business sense for Saudi Arabia too. But normalizing with Israel is about more than making money. It's no secret that MBS is trying to remake his own image as a modern leader. He's got a lot to overcome. Think the war in Yemen, arresting critics, even accusations he was involved in the shocking dismemberment of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
He plans at some point to ascend to power. He plans not to have any Western disapproval of this, especially in Washington. So this is big on his mind.
So for a smooth ascension to the throne, MBS needs friends in high places.
We've become very good friends.
Back in 2018, Trump and MBS were laughing it up at the Oval Office. The occasion was a business tour by Saudi Arabia.
$3 billion, $525 million, that's peanuts for you.
Under Trump, it's a relationship that seems to be able to withstand just about anything. Even after Khashoggi's murder, Trump's son-in-law and advisor Jared Kushner kept in touch with MBS. But with Joe Biden as US president, that relationship is expected to change.
It's not going to be any more WhatsApp messages with Kushner in the middle of the night. It's going to go back to institutional relations, to going through the embassy, going through the State Department.
But there's still time for Trump and others to influence the next 4 years, especially when it comes to Iran, because nothing makes friends quite like having a common enemy.
They divert tens of billions of dollars to their nuclear program.
احنا لا نتفق أن نصل إلى يوم من الأيام إيران بينها وبين القنبلة النووية أيام معدودة.
We will never let that happen.
One of the first things Trump did in office was pull out of the nuclear deal and order more sanctions on Iran. But the incoming US president says he wants to revive that deal. That could be why Trump seems to be pushing all these new alliances in the Middle East before Biden gets in.
I cannot reverse a Saudi-Israeli deal. If it already happened before he comes to power, it already happened. He has to deal with the new reality.
A deal between MBS and Netanyahu won't be an easy sell to many people in the region. There's already been some resistance to the deals that were signed before. Normalizing ties with Israel's Arab neighbors is a big win for Netanyahu. Saudi Arabia would be the top prize. For all of them, it's good for business. For some, it means isolating Iran. But for the Palestinians, it's a betrayal. If there's a news story or a topic you want us to explain on Start Here, get in touch by leaving a comment wherever you're watching this video. The best way to keep up with our episodes is to like, follow, or subscribe to Al Jazeera. I'll see you next week.
The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and His Highness, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates, will sign a treaty of peace, diplomatic relations, and full normalization. They will each sign 3 copies, one in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. We kindly ask that all guests remain seated for the signing of the documents.
Can you be helpful here in telling me your mind?
Okay. You do the same for me in Arabic.
I will.
So, which one is mine?
Thank you.
Years.
Can we flip them over or can we turn them up?
The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Bahrain will now sign the Declaration of Peace. They will each sign 3 copies, one in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. We kindly ask that all guests remain seated for the signing of the documents.
Sure? Yes.
the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, His Highness, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates, and the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Bahrain will now sign the Abraham Accords. They will each sign 4 copies, 1 in English, 1 in Hebrew, and 2 in Arabic.
Peace in the Middle East is the holy grail of foreign policy. In the 7 decades since the founding of Israel, only Egypt and Jordan have signed peace treaties. But in September 2020, Israel signed a historic peace agreement known as the Abraham Accords with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain on the steps of the White House. This unprecedented moment was the first step in not only normalizing public relations and ushering in peace, but opening the door for more agreements between Israel and other Arab and Muslim nations. The Abraham Accords were almost immediately followed by Sudan and then Morocco, joining the agreement just a few weeks later. With this, Israelis can finally fly to places like Dubai, Khartoum, and Abu Dhabi. Maybe a Chabad house in Tehran is next. But how did this deal come about? Who were the players at the table? And what did negotiators have to overcome to make this dream a reality? Since its creation in 1948, Israel has had to suffer invasion and incursions from surrounding nations. Israel regularly warred with Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and other countries in the years since its founding, right up until the Yom Kippur War of 1973, and what has come to be generally known as the Arab-Israeli conflict. Since then, Israel has made monumental strides when it signed a peace deal with Egypt in 1979 and then Jordan in 1994. However, in 2002, the Arab Peace Initiative unified Arab countries against other such peace deals, insisting that peace could not succeed until Israel agreed to return to pre-1967 borders and ending the conflict with the Palestinians. This, more or less, left the peace process at a standstill until 2019, when representatives from Israel and the UAE started meeting secretly due to mutual concerns over Iranian influence in the region. In June 2020, Youssef El Otaiba, the UAE's ambassador to the United States, wrote an op-ed in an Israeli newspaper calling out Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for considering an annexation of the West Bank. He put it clearly, it's either annexation or normalization. Normalization means making their peaceful relationship official. The keyword normalization was not something that had been proposed so publicly before. In the wake of these statements, American officials moved to facilitate talks between the two nations. On August 13, 2020, the US, Israel, and the United Arab Emirates announced in a joint statement the intention to sign a peace agreement. Almost immediately after the announcement of the UAE deal in August, Bahraini officials contacted the White House saying, "We want to be next." And 29 days later, King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa made it public that Bahrain had brokered a similar deal with Israel. Despite the first UAE president, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, labeling Israel an enemy in 1971, there have been reports of behind-the-scenes economic and even diplomatic relations in recent years. Bahrain, on the other hand, has had informal ties with Israel for over 20 years. And with increasing unease about Iranian aggression in the Persian Gulf, that relationship has steadily grown stronger over the last decade. The Accords aren't so much the putting aside of differences for the sake of peace, as they are officially recognizing and establishing these relations. In February of 2020, leaders of Sudan and Israel started talks about normalization. It began with opening Sudanese airspace for Israeli-registered planes. In May, Israelis flew in a medical crew to help Sudanese diplomat Najwa Ghazaldam, who was managing the negotiations between Sudan and Israel. Gadeldam unfortunately lost her battle with the disease and never got to see the fruits of her labor when on October 23, 2020, Sudan joined the peace party, becoming the third nation to become a part of the Abraham Accords, signing retroactively. Sudan, in a way, is an even bigger accomplishment. The country had ties to Iran and had been labeled by the US a state sponsor of terrorism. Israel also claimed they were helping Hamas smuggle weapons into Gaza. But in 2016, Sudan cut ties with Iran and halted arms smuggling into the Gaza Strip. This greatly eased tensions between the two countries. In Morocco, there has been a Jewish presence for centuries. Most notably, after the expulsion of Jews from Spain, whole communities fled to the North African nation. By the 1940s, as many as 250,000 Jews lived in the country, making up 10% of Morocco's population. But when Israel declared its independence, upheaval erupted in Morocco. Jews en masse fled Morocco due to persecutions such as boycotts and riots. Though Morocco and Israel did establish some diplomatic relations following the Oslo Accords in the mid-90s, it wasn't long before those ties fell apart after the outbreak of the Second Intifada in 2000. But informal relations did continue, and Israelis could still visit on organized tours. In December of 2020, the US made a bold move and formally recognized Morocco's claims to the resource-rich Western Sahara, which, in exchange, re-established diplomatic ties between Morocco and Israel. And with that, the Abraham Accords had its fourth member. Despite the establishment of long-sought-after peace, these treaties have had vocal reactions, some of joy and praise, but some that are skeptical and have outright condemned it. In Israel, lawmakers on the left showed support for the deal, including Yair Lapid, often a vocal critic of Netanyahu, while some on the right, like Yamina party leader Naftali Bennett, expressed reservations that the deal would stop Israel from fully annexing the entirety of the land of Israel. Divided opinions emerged from the Arab side, revealing that Arab solidarity along the Muslim nations aren't as homogenous as the rest of the world might have thought. A New York Times op-ed characterized the division as those who want to let the future bury the past and those who want to let the past keep burying the future, noting the UAE aims to move forward while Iran staunchly opposes progress. Saudi Arabia gave tacit approval to the deal, and the Arab League, a 22-member body of Arab states, declined to formally condemn it. That lack of condemnation from the Arab League resulted in the Palestinian Authority protesting, with Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki conceding his chairmanship of the League's council. Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza had relied on support and solidarity from the other Arab and Muslim nations to put pressure on Israel. The Abraham Accords got Israel's annexation of the West Bank to stop, but that left Palestinians in the same position they've been in for years, but now with a bigger fear than ever that Israel's sovereignty over the West Bank will be legitimized, reducing the Palestinians to a bargaining chip. Since its founding, Israel has been isolated from its neighbors behind an iron wall of aggression, violence, and threats of economic boycott. But with the arrival of the Abraham Accords, attitudes in the Arab world seem to be finally shifting. Saudi Arabia hasn't signed on, but that doesn't mean they won't eventually. If these normalizations with the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco hold and relations flourish, who knows what countries might be next? A future Israeli-Arab coalition might even put pressure on Iran to come to the negotiating table, truly ushering peace into the region.